Are you ready to be inspired?
Yes.
I'm going to tell you the one. I'm going to tell you the one that all of you need to hear right now, because a lot of you might be younger and you might not have experienced this to the extent that some of us have to this point.
What's up, friends? Welcome to another episode of the RE Junkies podcast, where we supply your regular fix of all things real estate. Make sure you're the first to get your dose of the RE Junkies podcast by subscribing on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube. And while you're there, drop us a review. I'm Brooks O'Hearn, joined by my co-host Kaiten Murphy, and today we've got our friend Vinny Giglio out of Charlotte, North Carolina as well. Vinny, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
So excited that you were here.
I'm so excited to be here, and the fact that you guys are doing this podcast is amazing.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun. I don't even know. How long ago did we meet, Vinny? It was like 3 years ago?
It was definitely before the COVID madness. I think it was about a year before. Yeah, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I met Vinny at a meetup, I think. Or no. I met you through Subcom. I think it was my dad, actually.
Yes.
And so Vinny began his career in 2005 when he joined a mortgage brokerage specializing in commercial properties in Southern California. A couple years later, he left the corporate world and he started his own brokerage, closing nearly, 1,000, 5+
Closed over 1,000 transactions. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Wow.
Since then, Vinny came from California to Charlotte, which, like we said, is where we met. And he's largely moved into the real estate development space, which, funnily enough, he is revitalizing my hometown of Mooresville into the coolest space ever. So we've actually reconnected a lot lately on that. And I keep telling him that he's like 10 years too late for personal reasons, but really it's perfect timing. So before we get into all of that, Vinny, I want to just start from the beginning, because you did not start your career in real estate, correct?
I did not.
Okay. Tell us where you started and then how you got into real estate.
Sure. I've always been of the thought process, try everything in life. You only live once. So I really do live into that. So I've been everything from a surfer and water polo player to an infantryman in the Army and an airline pilot at 23. And it was, do you want me to tell the story behind the airline?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I was with the airline, I was with a regional carrier of Northwest called Pinnacle, which is flew a CRJ 200. It's a 50-passenger jet. And I was based in the Northeast, but I was still living in California. So I'm working 26 days a month. I'm on reserve. I'm making, on average, it ended up being about $3.44 an hour. It was $1,200 a month. I mean, it's silly, right? But and here I am. I've got $150,000 in student loan debt. I have no money to my name. That's my only income. I thought it was a lot of money, but at 23, you think anything is, right? So I'm just excited to be living into my dream of being an airline pilot. About 4 months in, I'd finished with my training captain, and he, this one captain I was with, had bought me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and that was in Minneapolis Airport. And immediately we took off. I started reading. I, by the way, I have ADD. I was recently diagnosed. So for me to read a book is very difficult. It was like the one book I can remember actually reading because it was so interesting. And it just changed the way I thought about literally everything in the financial world. Assets versus liabilities, all that stuff. So getting back on track, he bought me that book. We had a 4-day trip together. So, a lot of the airplane flies by computers when you're in cruise, and you got to do things. Some people pull up laptops, some people read books. So I was reading a book. I was reading that book, and I got to Washington, D.C. at the end of that trip, ironically, and I was deadheading back from Washington, D.C. to Michigan. And a deadhead is where a pilot who's in uniform finishes his trip and they got to get you back to your home base, basically. So when you see those pilots go up to the booth and they get on the plane before everybody, I follow them and I go take a seat somewhere that's available in the back. So I did. I'm sitting about halfway back in the plane, and this old gray-haired captain, he's a mainline pilot. He was our pilot for the day. He comes walking back and he looks at me and he goes, how old are you? I was like, I'm 23. And he goes, get out. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean get out? He's like, no. He's like, get out of the airline business. He's like,
of the plane or?
yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, you kicking me off your plane? What's going on here? Okay. No, so he said, he goes, look, you're young enough where you need to go figure out a way to make a lot of money and come back and pay me to fly you around. That's what he said. So I've got Rich Dad Poor Dad on my brain, fresh. I got this guy, this captain who just said that to me. So I flew home, or flew to Michigan, my home base. And I took the next flight out to Southern California where I lived. And remember, I literally have a drawing from being 5 years old with an airplane that I drew saying, I want to be a pilot. So I'm 23 living my dream. And I called the airline and I said, I quit. Where do I send my uniforms? Just like that. Remember, I got like 13 pilot's licenses and years of schooling and all this stuff, and had served in the Army, was going to go to the Air Wing and didn't. And so it was a real challenge getting to that point. It's like becoming a doctor almost, you know? So I just took the risk and I was like, I'm going to go do something. And I had a good friend of mine who was a commercial real estate broker in Southern California, and he referred me. He goes, why don't you get into commercial lending? And I was like, okay, I'm good with numbers. I don't like sitting behind a desk, but I'm good with numbers and I'll give it a shot. And so I don't know how deep into this you want me to go.
Keep going. I love it.
I worked for a company for 4 months that I initially got hired by in Orange County, California. And it was a great experience. I was put kind of in a back room and just trying to do deals and screwing up and not knowing anything about what I was doing. So I was just learning at the same time, studying for my real estate license, which I got pretty quick. I was good at taking tests at that time in my life from all that pilot stuff.
Right.
And, but I really wasn't happy at that company and how much time it was taking, especially because it was like a 2-hour drive each way. I felt like with traffic in LA, it's nuts. Mm-hmm. So I found a company closer to home, and I'd put my resume in a couple times and didn't hear anything back. So one day I just had a hair and I was like, I'm just going to walk in and tell them who I am. And I'm a nobody, but I'm going to tell them who I am and what I'm going to do for them, right? So I walked in one day and there was this nice lady sitting. They had like a glass door, so they didn't let the public in, but they had someone out front who would answer the phones and stuff. And I looked at her and I'm like, hi, my name is Vinny. I want to see your owners. And she's like, you want to do what? I'm like, I want to see your owners. I want to tell them who I am and what I'm going to bring to your company. And she's like, she thought I was crazy. So she called, there were 3 owners. She called one of their assistants, told them there's this crazy guy in the lobby. He wants to see the owner. And he comes out and I just told him the same thing. I'm like, look, I'm Vinny. This is my experience. This is how I'm going to make your company a lot of money. And he goes, hold on a second. So he walks back and he goes, come on back. And so I go back. And I sit in the office with the first owner and I literally repeat myself. And the owner just looks at me and is like, well, how are you going to do all this? And I go, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this many calls. These are the places, because I had some experience on how to at least get in front of people, right? So I just laid it out there. And he goes, hold on a second. And then he walks away for a little bit and I'm just sitting in there kind of, going, what am I doing? And then he walks back and he goes, come here. I want you to meet someone else. So we go in and I meet one of the other owners. So that day I ended up meeting all 3 owners of the company. That day they also put me in front of who now is my business partner in my LA business that we just sold our business together, and I'll get to that. He was their top producer. His name's Pete Collins, and he's like a second father to me. I've been with him for almost 2 decades now. And he was looking to hire someone to work for him, ironically. He'd been through 25 applicants. He hated all of them. Here I am, young, motivated. I'm also a veteran. He's a Vietnam veteran. We click right away. So 3 days later, they call me and they made me an offer. They took me out to sushi and I was hired. And that was really the moment that, because I kind of stepped out on that limb, that fired it off for me. Because now I'm about to work for someone who's very experienced, doesn't take anyone's crap. Like I'm like the nicest guy in the world in 2005 with no backbone. I'm just like, everyone will always tell me, you're too nice. And here I am with a 7-year in the jungle fighting in special forces Vietnam vet. It was a interesting dynamic, to say the least. So
I was going to say, sounds like a match made in heaven.
It was heaven. It was good cop, bad cop to a T. So
Vinny,
I worked.
before we go any further on
Yeah,
that,
sure.
though, a couple things that I'm picking up and that I know about you because I know you personally is you are a huge action taker. So, and you've already exemplified that a couple times since we've started talking. And you talked about you started in this room when you got your commercial brokerage license, and you were failing and you're failing and failing. First of all, what kept you going? And then second of all, what was it that kind of drove you to put yourself out there? Because I feel like a lot of people, especially when starting a new career or starting a new business in the entrepreneurial space, they're like, I'm scared to put myself out there. So what was kind of the driving force for you there?
That's a really great story, and it like gives me goosebumps to think about because when I was growing up, my dad had his first heart attack when I was really young, and I had the most loving family in the world, and I love that man to death. He passed away a couple years ago, and at 68, and he had a condition we found out that called sudden death. So that's the unofficial term, by the way. So I'm really young. I mean, like, I always forget how old I was because it was just so traumatic. But between then and the time he died, he had 68 heart attacks.
Wow.
And I'm the oldest in the family. So obviously it forced me to grow up pretty quick.
Sure.
And things I thought about as a child was, I don't want my kids to have to go through that with me when I get older. I mean, these are things I'm telling myself at like 12 years old, right? 15 years old, like as I'm going, because I had to revive my dad more times than I can remember, even as a young child. And so that gave me a lot of inspiration. Number one, to live life to its fullest, right? Because here I am, my dad's super healthy, by the way, when he had his first heart attack, playing basketball at Venice Beach, like, pickup games, rocking them. He played in college, was set to go to the NBA and ended up getting really sick. And so it was this whole, so I'm watching this really healthy man who I love to death. And he's like dead in front of me and as a child. And so live life to its fullest. And then also I wanted to do something where eventually I could have enough money and not worry like we did growing up,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, talk about some trauma.
Yep. Been working on that for a few years.
Yeah, I bet.
Didn't even know I needed to.
Man, when you were telling me about when you were telling the story about your interview and walking into that firm and then meeting the owners, literally what I was picturing was like a Wolf on Wall Street or like Suits interview where you like you decided due to your past struggles, you decided like, hey, I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm going to make it work.
That's exactly right.
And you're like, by the way, that I think is the sign of every great. Well, we'll just put it. We'll just bring it back even higher. That's the sign of greatness in my mind. You don't know how it's going to work, but like, I'm going to make it work. And that's it's that undying confidence. But I was laughing because there were like so many similarities to I just started watching the show Suits, and I know it's an older show, but I just started watching it, and that's like the first interview where he comes in and he wasn't even supposed to be there, but he's like, hey, listen, just like take my interview, and
So
he's
funny.
like, I'm gonna make this work, so just let me show you how.
That was basically written for me, I guess.
Yeah.
I should watch it.
Based on Vinny's life. He doesn't even know it.
I'm very humbled by your comment too, because to me, I was just living the only way I knew how. And, I don't look at it like greatness per se, but you have to, if you're going to be in real estate and you're going to be successful, you have to take risks, period. End of story.
Absolutely.
I'm going to segment for a sec. All this social media stuff, people are so full of crap. It's not even funny. Real estate is hard. Real estate takes a lot of time and commitment. And we used to joke, and you'll see why later. I mean, you've already heard the volume of business I've done, but look, 10% of the people in real estate are making 90% of the money. Yeah, and half the time, the bigger the smile, the less money they're making. So It is a grind. I say that because it's a grind. It's a metaphorical thing about the smile. So anyway, that's what you're saying.
No, you're absolutely right. Like you got to roll your sleeves up. This business takes some grit, and I relate it to sports. and all the greatest athletes, Tiger, Michael Jordan, and name your sport, name your athlete. If they were great at some level, they had I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I know that I'm going to do this.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
I mean, Tiger won a U.S. Open on a broken leg. Like somebody, he never should have even swung a golf club that week. And he said, "Watch me."
Right. Look, my background's in the Army, and I'm a jet pilot. I don't know crap about real estate. My degree's in professional aeronautics. Like, what the hell do I know? And but I know how to find the answers. When I don't know something, I know how to say I don't know, but I'll find out. And in real estate, you have to be able to humble yourself to step back and be okay with telling someone that. There are many customers that I dealt with where, number one, either I didn't know and I said, hey, look, I don't know, but I'm going to find your answer. Or number two, you know what? That's a better deal. You should go over there and come back to me when you have something else. And just between that and the integrity, that's how you're going to build a really huge, successful client base also. I'm sure we'll get into all this.
I was just about to say, you hit the nail on the head of being a successful entrepreneur, in my opinion. Integrity. And, I respect the people the most who say, hey, I can't provide you the best service in this, in this circumstance, but please come back and, we'll do this again. And I respect so much when they're like, you're going to go save money over here. But I want to help you, the next time, kind of thing. And then also just, admitting to the fact that you don't know everything, but you will find somebody, or you have a connection to somebody that does.
And I learn something new every day. I've been doing this 2 decades.
Every deal.
Every single deal is different. 1,000 deals, I can name something on every deal that's different every single time. And I'm shocked by it. I'm like, how the heck did I, you know what I mean? So when you're on your real estate journey, you have to know that that's coming. Don't be surprised that everything's going to change all the time. But you have to be able to adapt and move around.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And your the integrity piece, like, you don't just owe that to your clients, you owe that to yourself to tell clients when they are the wrong fit, that they are the wrong fit. Because nothing, and I'm sure you can say this after thousands of deals, nothing will be harder than a deal that you take on knowing it's the wrong fit and you still try to force it to the finish line. That deal will be harder than anything you ever come across.
You just brought up something that is like, it took me a long time to learn. And once I learned it, my success went through the roof. And it was that I tried to do every freaking deal in the beginning.
Yep.
And the guy I was working for, I was his young grasshopper. That's what we called me in the beginning, where I was like the Karate Kid thing. And and I looked at every deal, and he admired it because I did put so much work into it. But if I specialize in multifamily financing, right, 5+ units, I'm going to be an expert at that. In the beginning, I thought I was an expert at everything, and I knew nothing. So I'd get pie in the sky deals or deals on churches and all this stuff. And here I am, I'm getting so close on some of these deals, and they blow up, and they're just done for. Whereas every apartment deal, it's just done. And once I learned to focus on my expertise, all that stuff didn't matter. I know I could tell you right now, you bring a deal in front of me, I'll say, nope, not my deal. I'll just cut it out right there. I don't do those, sorry. But here's someone that does. And you know what? In the background, I'm not looking for a referral from them. I just want you to, and I'm going to segment into this because we're doing a lot of like preaching to people right now about what to do's and not do's. When I made the most money in real estate was when I stopped looking at how much money I was going to make on a deal, and I focused on the service to my customer. Period. End of story. If you build it, they will come, right? Very Field of Dreamsy. If you focus on taking care of your customer, number one, it's going to go a lot smoother. And number two, they're going to stay with you forever because they know that you're going to be of integrity. You're going to do what you say you're going to do. And they will tell people about you. Those people will tell people about you. That's the way you need to show up. Stop worrying about the money. And that's what drives me crazy about people on the internet. Everything is, look at this, nice cars, look at it's easy, blah, 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 I'm making all this money. Shut up. Focus on your
how much
customer.
I made last month.
Yep.
None of that matters.
Yeah.
None of that matters. First of all, you don't need to make that much money. How much do you need to survive? That's where you need to start in your brain when you're getting into real estate. Just make enough so you can live and just build your business and reinvest in
Then it'll
yourself.
grow.
It'll
Yeah,
grow.
I mean, it'll grow. Like,
Yep. Anyway,
yeah,
I'm going to get off
I
my
got-
hot. I could go on for like an hour just on stuff like that I could preach to you guys.
No.
No, but those are such like hard-earned lessons. I mean, you're
Hard.
absolutely right, and that's one of the main reasons we started this podcast is because Kate and I have such a different view on things, and yeah, like we coach, we have a lot of coaching certifications. We obviously share our knowledge. We obviously charge for our knowledge at different times and points. But there are so many things in real estate that people aren't sharing, and it's like, hey, in a 30-second TikTok video, I'm going to teach you how to wholesale a house and make 20 grand this month. Yes, you maybe can do that, but the problem is after that, like after that 30 seconds, there are hours and hours of knowledge that are needed to get into that or to buy an apartment building, right? Hey, it's sexy, it's cool. Everybody can put a 30-second TikTok out there that, hey, I bought this, 30 unit apartment building and it's going to pay for your house and your car for the rest of your life. Awesome. That is freaking awesome. But don't put it out there like that, that it's so easy to do. It might be simple, but it's not easy.
No.
And boring in business is okay. To just continually do the same thing over and over and over and over again. I mean, the most profitable company in the world is Apple, or the highest valued company in the world is Apple. And what do? iPhones, Apple Watches, and what are they accused of? The same iPhone with a new number every single year.
That's exactly
what
right.
do? They keep selling. They keep selling.
Yep. Yeah, if you're doing different types of deals all the time, you're learning way too much all the time. And I have a couple people I've ran into across the years that I really like who they are, but they never make any money. And most of the time, it's because why do insurance and loans and real estate and yada 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 yada? And it's like, oh, well, are you an expert in any of them? Well,
Right.
no.
Yeah.
Well,
are you even sure of your own name? Like,
right. So it's like they're chasing $5 over here and leaving $1 million on the table over here. And just, I've always preached I've preached a lot to the younger gen. I built a Instagram following over it years ago, and I'm so busy these days, and I don't want to be famous. So I don't spend a lot of time doing it anymore. I'm not chasing internet clout, but I still talk into a lot of kids' lives offline. And this is along the line I tell them. I say, become an expert at one thing. That's it. Because you can take that anywhere. You can do it forever. No one can take it away from you. You'll always be valuable to society, to yourself. So anyway, that's really important. And I'll take that one step further. When I was before my career really took off, there was a guy in Southern California. His name is Bill Ruane. I lived in this little town of El Segundo. It's like 1 square mile. It was less than 20,000 people. And year after year, Bill Ruane was the top RE/MAX real estate agent in the entire country. And he only did deals in El Segundo, and everybody knew who he was. Everybody. You need to sell property, you call Bill Ruane. And that's just how it was. So when I got into real estate, I focused my efforts with Pete on, we're going to focus on one area and one product type, and we're going to be the best at that product type in those areas, and everyone's going to know who we are in those areas, and they're going to want to do business with us. And that's how we built such a successful commercial real estate finance business.
Yeah.
Well, I love that too, because that's something, that's a trend that we talk about on this podcast all the time in one form or fashion, is niching down into what you're good at. And the cool thing about that too is when you become an expert on your whatever that is for you, you can then shift it with, a market shift or a lifestyle shift or whatever it is, because you're the expert. So you're in control of the narrative. And not to say that you use that maliciously, but you're able to kind of shift it to service people better depending on what the conditions are.
That's exactly right. And Kaiten, you know this from the developments I'm doing here, is I am focused on downtown Mooresville. That's it. I don't have developments anywhere else. I know all the politicians. I know all the downtown people. I know all the business owners. They know who I am. I'm doing it with love and passion and purpose. And I don't need to go build originally we were like, let's go build in Charleston, let's go build in Nashville, all that stuff. And when COVID hit, we're like, we love Mooresville. Let's focus in downtown Mooresville. And that's all we need to do. I mean, it even goes as far as that. So we applied the same principles that I learned from that one guy back then, even into our development company. Will we eventually develop somewhere else? Probably. What we'll do is we'll build out and finish our vision for downtown, and maybe we'll go find another town we fall in love with and do it all over again. I don't know.
Can you guys give the listeners a visual of kind of the size or a comparison of the size of Mooresville? Because I don't know. I mean, I've been there, right? And Kaiten, your parents used to live there. Obviously, that's where you grew up. Size, like population or size of downtown or anything in relation, so people can visualize it.
Kaiten, do you want to start on this one?
No, I'll let you take it and I'll fill in.
Okay. So Mooresville is potentially with the unincorporated area is going to grow to 100,000 population. It's about 20 minutes north, depending on traffic, 20 miles, let's call it, north of uptown Charlotte. It's right along a very, very large man-made lake called Lake Norman, which is 520 miles of shoreline. It's 33 miles, from south to north. And there's 3 other cities south of Mooresville, between Mooresville and uptown, basically. Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson. It has I'm from Southern California, and I grew up in El Segundo. It has a very South Bay vibe. If any of you are from Southern California, it's El Segundo, Manhattan, Hermosa, and Redondo Beach. And, but anyway, so it is kind of spread out, but it's downtown in particular where we're developing is like, how many blocks? Right? It's 3 streets.
Yeah.
And half a mile in length.
Maybe.
So we're not talking.
Here's the thing too about Mooresville. Growing up there, so he said it was kind of along Lake Norman. So growing up in Mooresville, there's basically 2 Mooresvilles. There's Lake Norman side, and then there's downtown Mooresville side. I grew up in downtown Mooresville, where there wasn't a lot to do. We had a couple of restaurants that were really great. Shops came in and out pretty consistently. No one just could do a lot of business there because everyone was drawn to the lake side, which, a lake's great. So it's really cool now to see. And Mooresville is the NASCAR capital of the world also, by the way.
Right.
So it's cool to see this other side of Mooresville actually like kind of come to life and be that tourist destination that the other side of Mooresville is, because we kind of always only knew it as, the first thing when I think about Mooresville was Main Street. I didn't really even think about the other streets where you said there's 2 or 3 main streets. I thought of Main Street.
Well, there was nothing on them, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Not even 5 years ago. Yeah.
18-year-old Kaiten is still pissed off at you.
I
know. That's awesome. But downtown Mooresville also is very charming. If you drive down, you think you're at Disneyland. Like, it's just this old Western town. And
they filmed shows there, Netflix shows.
Yes. And the town is very committed to what they're doing there. So they shut down the main street, once a month when it's warm out for food trucks, and they bring 19 food trucks in, and, there's 5,000-6,000 people that show up every time. And they've got a new amphitheater behind one of our projects at Liberty Park, and they're putting national acts in there. And it's just a really cool hometown, vibe that's alive. They just need more people living in downtown. And they needed someone to come in and do it right. So when we came in, we decided to do it. Where would we want to live, work, play? And it reminds me a lot of my hometown of El Segundo. That was, everybody knew each other, small businesses. My hometown of El Segundo, it took 20 years for them to get their first fast food restaurant. Wow. And it was a fight for a fast food restaurant, because we had same thing. We had like the residential side of El Segundo, and then we had the commercial side of El Segundo, and it was always very separate. It was separated by a main street called Sepulveda. And I remember when the first McDonald's was approved, and now it's a lot different. But so Mooresville, even like our most recent development's 140,000 square feet. It's 4 stories. It's called Mill 1. It's 90 luxury apartment units over 32,000 feet of retail. And we've taken our time to lease up the commercial because we are trying to do it with purpose. We are taking local restaurant operators in the Lake Norman area and having them open restaurants there. We're taking local businesses. We're supporting. So we're approaching it very different so that it keeps, because it's going to develop, whether anyone likes it or not. It's going to build up. It's primed for it.
Yep.
The city's pushing for it. But we're going to do it the right way. And we're going to make sure we set a standard so no one screws it up. So just to kind of, dogleg off that one, we're privately, we own a lot of the land in downtown now. And I think when it's all said and done, we'll have about $250 million in private investment from just our little 4-person operation, through local investors. And by the way, no institutional money. It's literally all local people. So you can tell, I mean, that's the way we're approaching it. So we just want to, it's going to be a legacy. It's going to outlive me. It's going to be there forever. It's going to outlive all of us. So we want to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And that goes back to, doing things with purpose and serving your customer. Our customer is the town of Mooresville and its citizens. So we want to do it right by them. It's not all about the money.
It's evident you're doing right by us as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because people are going to be, I mean, they're going to be more apt to show up and go down there on a Tuesday night if it's a local business than they will if it's a Five Guys.
That's exactly right.
Like, something like that, or Olive Garden, or you name whatever chain franchise you want. And something I want you to highlight there right now is you mentioned no institutional money, and when it's all said and done, you will have raised $250 million, or right around $250 million in funding. So Kate and I say it all the time. Like, obviously there is more, there's endless money out there for real estate deals, no matter where you're at in the real estate game. So if you can very quickly, just some high level advice to a listener out there who may be thinking, well, it's hard to raise capital, or I don't know where I'm going to go to raise capital. Obviously you've got thousands of deals, but like, break it down into like the most simple terms to raise any amount of capital for any deal.
It all starts, and this is going to sound cliche, it all starts with having integrity. Period. End of story. If people see that you're real and know you're real and you have real relationships with people, they're going to take more of a chance on you than someone who's just putting a spreadsheet in front of them or packet to invest. I mean, every investment, every building we have built has been like a one-pager, almost like it looks like it was drawn up on a napkin how it was done. I mean, it's not that basic, but you know what I'm saying? Like, and half of my investors, just through being relational, don't even care to see the prospectus. They're like,
right,
are the returns you're telling me what it's going to be? Yep. Okay, cool. Where do you want me to send the money? And then if you do a small deal and you prove yourself to one person, one investor, a couple of your friends, a couple, whatever, they're going to start to tell other people. And it's very grassroots. It happens organically. Like our first deal, we had 23 investors. Our second deal, Mill One, was 12. Our third deal was another 20. Our fourth deal. So like, it might contract and expand. Now we have so much money being thrown at us. We don't know what to do with it. We don't know where to place our smaller investors. Now we have literally private people in the Lake Norman area that want to stroke the check for the entire size of the project. No bank. Because they also believe in your vision and what you're doing, and they want to be a part of it because they go, oh my gosh, these guys are actually building with purpose. They're not hiring someone from out of the country to build it cheaper just because they want to make money.
Yeah.
I'm going to go sit in that wine shop and drink my wine at the end of the day, or dine at that restaurant they're putting in there. So they want to be a part of that.
I was hoping that V word was going to come out, vision, because it's got, you get people to buy into you and buy into the vision of your deal. And I mean, I'm glad you said that. So for those of you listening, I've not raised $250 million yet in my career, but take it from someone who has, and it's the same advice.
And I'd never raised $1.
Integrity.
I'd never raised $1 in my life until 5 years ago.
I love that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is insane. So just let us know when the Vinny hedge fund comes out.
Yeah. We're talking about maybe doing a fund because we got to put the funds somewhere from these people, but one thing I also learned from the loan business was always Under promise and over deliver too. You don't need to sell people on the fact that you're going to do something that you can't do. Do not do that in this industry. It will burn you. That person will never use you again, ever. Yeah. When my customers come to me, they know, and both on the commercial finance side and in the development side as an investor, they know that they're likely going to exceed. They're going to get their expectations exceeded, right?
I guess that's the one place that you probably can't have that that kind of cavalier attitude or mindset of, I don't know how it's going to happen, but I know it's going to happen. Like when you're taking people's money, you better know what's going to happen, at least to a solid degree, and tailor those expectations from your money partners so that you actually deliver on what you say. And when you're taking people's money, that's way more serious than looking someone in the face saying, I'm going to get this deal from contract to close. Like it's way different.
Right. And Caton, you sat in our office recently with your mom and yourself. And it'd be interesting to hear, we're talking about vision, right? When we sat down and we looked at the map and I showed you our vision for the town. I mean, how did you guys feel coming out of there when we were done?
I was floored, first of all. I mean, I literally had to pick my jaw up off the floor. We walked out so excited. Again, knowing that town so personally, it was just really, really cool. And I was excited. You know, neither of us live there anymore, but we frequent Mooresville all the time. We've got rental properties there. And so it's so cool to know that both our tenants and just residents there get to experience that life. And truthfully, makes me want to move back to Mooresville. So, you know, not only do I think your vision is amazing and it's really cool, I can tell that you guys are also so excited about it too, which comes back to this whole theme of passion. And I know that you're passionate about it. I know that you care about the town. So it's really, really cool to see all that you're bringing into it.
Thank you for that. That's basically exactly what I was expecting on the end to hear is feeling that passion and the love for what you're doing. I mean, that's so important in real estate. There's so many people I've run into over the years, brokers that I've worked with, that you could tell they're just in it for the money, or, you know, there's ulterior motives. But when you run into people that are passionate, like Caton, you've always been so passionate about this business, and that's going to reflect in who your clients are, how your vendors are treated, how they treat you, the things that people are willing to do to get things done for you. I mean, that is so critical. And I'm sure a lot of people you guys are talking to, we're talking to on this podcast, are agents, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We'll have a lot of agents
or investors.
Yeah. I mean, everything we're talking about in this episode is just so fundamental and so basic. And if you can really just listen to these things and take them to heart and really apply them to your business, you are going to grow so exponentially, you won't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, that's what we talk about a lot too, is all of these things are very, very simple to do. But the thing about simple things is they're not easy. They're simple. And they're also simple not to do. So you really have to have the ability to, on the days that you don't feel motivated, you've got the discipline to do those simple things and apply these tactics that we're talking about.
That's exactly right. It's like a saying that I've learned recently. It's for sale, not on sale. Like these little tags, right? I want to throw that one somewhere in this podcast somewhere so that you guys can utilize that when people are trying to.
I like it. I like it a lot.
So, Penny, we've talked a lot about a lot of highs in your career, but we all know that, especially in the entrepreneurial world, there's lows too, and it tends to ebb and it tends to ebb and flow. Yep. Thank you, Peyton. So I want to talk about maybe a low point in your career where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to make this happen. I don't know how I'm going to get off the floor.
Are you ready to be inspired?
Yes.
I'm going to tell you the one that all of you need to hear right now, because a lot of you might be younger and you might not have experienced this to the extent that some of us have to this point. But if you've heard about this, there was a crash of, about 10 years ago, 2008, 2009, 2010. And obviously I came out of the airline. I'm in the business. I was at the point when the market was peaking where I was offered a partnership with the guy I was working for, and we were going to stay at that company. And it was a smaller percentage, but based on what he was bringing in and his client base and our client base that we were building together, it was going to be fairly significant for a 27-year-old, right? So I'm like high horse. I had always lived with my parents or, slept on people's couches or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I got my own place. Everything's going well. Life's good. And then it just literally overnight went off a cliff. The guy I was working for at the time was making a couple $1 million a year in gross commissions, before his payouts. And I was probably making 90 grand a year at the time, salaried plus some bonuses. I mean, I'll just be very transparent. And the year after the crash, I remember I made $18,000. So luckily I didn't buy anything stupid when I started making a little bit of money, but all of a sudden I'm like, am I gonna be able to eat next month? I moved in with my cousin in a room in her house that she let me live in for free. But the takeaway from this, so I think that year I made 18, the next year I made 36. I mean, literally, if you live through that environment, I had guys worth $100 million that the banks would not lend to because their primary business was real estate. It was so bad, and that was the problem. The banks stopped lending, period. If you could get a loan, I don't know what the heck you were doing, but you were doing something. Because we came out of a stated loan environment. Stated meaning you could tell the bank you made whatever, and they just said, "Okay, here's your money."
I was gonna say it went from who couldn't get a loan. Like right before the crash, if you couldn't get a loan, there was something wrong, and if you could get a loan, everybody was like, "Who the hell are you?"
Yeah, it was brutal. But here's the inspiration, the takeaway from that. One thing I've learned in this business is you need to stay in front of people and you need to work. You need to work. I know a lot of brokers that they get a paycheck and you don't see them until the money runs out. And that is not the way to do this business. If you want to be one of that 10% that's making 90% of the money or has the big customer base or whatever, you need to be in the office every day. So in 2009 and 2010, I was in that office every day from 8 to 5. And I was calling and staying in touch with my clients every freaking day. And it was a grind and it sucked. And there were so many times I'll take it a step further. I applied to be a police officer in 2010 because I was so tired of making no money. Torrance Police Department in Southern California was hiring. I'm ex-military. I'm a grunt. I was fit, all this stuff, right? There were 250 applicants. They chose 8 people. I was one of them. And my business partner, when I got accepted, this was like a 6-month process, looked at me, he took me out to lunch. He's like, "Do you really want to get shot at? Do you really understand what you're going to be dealing with on the other end of this?" He's like, "This will get better." And I was like, "Yeah, you know what? You're right." And I walked in to the police department with a letter that they give you in this giant packet that you complete the whole 6 months. It's one letter that says, "I'd like to withdraw my application." And I signed it and sent it in. They're like, "You want to do what?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not, I've decided I don't want to do this." I mean, literally 250 applicants day one. I'm one of 8. And I was number 1 on their list to get hired. And it was just waiting for the next academy to roll around. And I pulled out. And that's how desperate I was during that time. But even during that, I was still going to the office every day making phone calls. And the second the bank started lending again, guess who everyone came to for a loan?
You.
Yes. And over the next 5 years, we became one of the top commercial real estate finance brokerages in all of Southern California. And it was just me and my partner. I mean, you're talking offices with 20 people. We were beating them.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
I think that's amazing because it like right now, obviously there are tons of different predictions about what the next 2-3 years are going to bring. But what cannot be disputed is that the next 2 to 3 years are going to be very different from the last 2 to 3 years. So if you're an agent, if you're an investor, if you're whoever you are, I think that piece of advice right there, if you want to weather the more difficult 2 to 3 years that are about to hit us than we just experienced, if you want to weather that and come out on the back end of it, then now is the time to be building relationships, calling, touching base. Yes, obviously you're going to still get some sales through this process, but you're also going to build the relationships. And as soon as things loosen up and people come back out the other side of it, they're going to go to one place.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it's everything now is so technological. Get in front of people and shake their hands, for crying out loud. Send them cards in the mail. No one does any of that anymore. Not a postcard. Send them a handwritten card. I used to do that to all my customers, birthdays from me. I'm sitting there. I'm doing all this volume, and I'm sitting there writing them cards. I've got customers that are good friends of mine now who are just great human beings, and they've invested in my projects. I had one customer when I first started building out here. He literally called me on a Sunday because I'm like, hey, I'm going to build this 72 unit up here. This is what I think, how I think it's going to do. He's like, I don't care about any of that. He's like, how much you need? Or I was like, well, you want to do 100,000? He's like, I'll tell you what, I'm going to write you a check for 200,000 and I'm going to go back to watching football and drinking my beer. And I was like, remember, I raised $0 in my life. But those are the kinds of relationships through integrity and working through these down times and hard times and building up their wealth and building up who they were, that they trusted me enough to not even care about the deal, really. They just knew who I was. And you need to be building that every day. If you're not building that every day, you're just going to be living for the next deal, hoping that you get a commission.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it really does come down to the people who are involved. I mean, there's always somebody on the other side of this transaction, whether it's a seller, whether it's an investor, whether it's your buyer, some client, there's always someone on the other end of the thing. And you just can't get the same connection through social media or a text message or, go out, meet them for coffee, write them a letter. That's funny. We actually had another one of our guests talk about cards that she sends out too. So
Yep.
I love that. I love that advice. I think that's super applicable as well.
And be present, be in your office, and that's a lot. A lot of agents don't want to be, or working from home is. I mean, look, there's a balance between working at home and going to the office. There's a balance I have, but generally, I'm in downtown Mooresville more than I'm at my house, and I could probably stop tomorrow and I'd have a great life, and I'm still working every friggin' day. So go work, people. Jeez.
Vinny's two rules for success seem to be show up and figure it out.
And have integrity while you're doing it.
And have integrity.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, that's number 3.
Yep.
So Vinny, we've kind of gone past, present, and I want to talk a little bit about the future. Obviously, the forefront of your priorities are still, revitalizing downtown Mooresville. Do you expect that to be what you're working on in the next 2 to 5 years? What are you kind of looking towards and aiming towards?
So yes, I would say I would say we've got about 5 years at least in downtown Mooresville, because of how many properties we own, how many parcels we're chasing, or we got, like, for example, we have one we're looking to partner with the town to build parking structure in a wrap building. So I would say 5 years at least in downtown. Beyond that, I'm sure opportunities will come up as we continue to go and grow. And I love North Carolina and the area. And by the way, I hate tearing down trees. It's really hard for me. So I only want to do like urban infill projects where I can make something that's already there better. That's just
I love that.
That's become my passion.
We do have a lot of trees here in North Carolina too.
Yes.
You guys have a ton of trees. I live next to the mountains, and you guys still have a ton of trees. Well, actually, probably because when you get into Denver, as soon as you get off the mountains, it's the plains. So there's nothing unless you plant it. Vinny, really quickly, you mentioned, like, hey, Mooresville has, if you count the surrounding areas, like 100,000 people. Yep. And downtown is like 3 to 6 blocks. I mean, we're not talking huge city here, where a lot of people tend to want that, like, you talk about commercial real estate, and generally a lot of people are like, oh, we're going to go to Omaha, or we're going to go to Kansas City, right? That's our small town that we want to go buy in, or we want to go develop in. But like, you're in what some people would classify as tiny, and most investors would write a town like this off and say, Mooresville's too small. It's 100,000 people. You got 6 blocks to develop. But you look at it and now you're like, well, that's the thing. I have 6 full blocks to develop, and then times maybe 2 or 3 blocks each way, or, whatever.
Right.
So tell me kind of how did you land on that, other than just, you love North Carolina and kind of the personal ties, but why did it make financial sense?
So this is kind of funny. My business partner, Mark Haltman, we met shortly after I moved here, and he had this parcel under contract, which is 7.5 acres, a mile outside of downtown, which is where we put a 72-unit garden style building. And obviously with no development experience, but the multifamily background, finance background, I know the product. And I'm like, when I first came to North Carolina, I did a farm to see if there was any business that I could do on the commercial real estate finance side. And I think there were 234 owners, apartment owners, 5+ units here. And I was like, that's not going to work. And my farm in California is 34,000 individual owners, single owners that own 5+ unit apartment buildings in Los Angeles County alone. And many of them own multiple properties. So
just slightly different.
yeah, it's just slightly different.
Just a little different pool you're swimming in.
So I'm like, what? I'm like, there's got to be a need for this product type here. And there's always need for apartments. And you see all the housing developments going in. I mean, look, when you put a housing development in, there's got to be commercial to support it. And then also with housing developments, there has to be multifamily to support it. It has to happen. Now, Charlotte, it's funny that you say small town, micro town. I mean, I see Charlotte as a small town from where I'm from, right? But yeah, Charlotte, for example, is the second largest banking hub in the United States, second to New York. There is, and anywhere you go, study the history about where it is, study patterns, study what businesses are there and what the growth is looking like. I mean, I expect Charlotte to be bursting at the seams at 485. Charlotte's surrounded by a highway in a circle. It's called 485.
Thank you for pointing that circle out, by the way, because Kaiten laughs at me every time I come to Charlotte, and I'm like, where inside the circle are we? And she's like, we don't have a circle. I'm like, there is a circle highway right there.
Circle.
Everybody in Charlotte tells me, like, no, that's not how we do things here. I'm like, I don't care. There's a circle on your map.
Well, but the pilot irony, I approach every deal I do, everything I do but with a 30,000 foot view. So I'm used to looking at the world like that. So that's why I pointed the circle out, because when I was in my younger pilot days, I navigated via highways. That's how you do it.
Yeah,
it's visual.
Yeah.
So two things about Mooresville I really like. One is its proximity to the lake and to Charlotte. When you have a city that grows, what ends up happening is a lot of wealth builds around the downtown initially, and then it starts to trickle out like this, and because it gets very congested, and then you start getting more crime. This is just literally, look at any city that's developed in the country. This is how it happens. And then it starts pushing some of that wealth out, right? And it goes into suburban areas. And the two places that they always move to is bases of mountains and water. Now, in Charlotte, we have a very unique scenario because 45 minutes south of Uptown or less, depending on traffic, is South Carolina. And South Carolina has no state income tax. So what you've seen and you might go, oh my gosh, like light bulb, south of Charlotte developed first. And when we moved here, that's where all the traffic was. And the reason is because they can work in Uptown and live in South Carolina, and they're not paying state tax. So,
and there's a lake there too.
Yes, and there's a lake there too. So it's primed, right? So people went that way. When I moved here, I'm like, oh my gosh, Lake Norman is just awesome. It's a little bit quieter than South End, but it's primed for development. Great people live up here. It was this whole thing. And then Mooresville, when I first moved here, was totally different. And that was less than 6 years ago. But it's not in Mecklenburg County, which is part of Charlotte. It's in Iredell County. Now, if you know anything about big cities, is when you play in the like proper county of that big city, everything is layered with red tape. Everything gets more difficult. As Charlotte grows, it's going to get harder and harder. We tried to do a development in Charlotte. Let me tell you something. In Cornelius, in fact, Mecklenburg. And it was a nightmare compared to what we're doing in Mooresville. So just stepping across that border, it's more business friendly. It's easier to do everything. It's just, so Mooresville was like, okay, when he had that building under contract, I'm like, let's build something here. Let's meet the apartment need, because we can tell there's a need for that. There's like 6 units in all of downtown Mooresville.
Yeah.
That was it for rent. That was it. So we're like, they need more than that, right? So, and then once we built those 72 units, all the businesses started reinvesting in themselves. I want to use the term seedy a little bit. There was crime in downtown Mooresville. Now, from everything we're doing, there's like zero crime. We get the crime reports and it's like, oh, it was a peaceful week again. Because now you're seeing a lot of reinvestment and people taking pride in their businesses and their buildings. So that's kind of the whys of Mooresville. If I mean, is there anything else?
I love it. No, that's perfect. That's perfectly practical because you hit on so many different things about, from geography to logistics of the county and the city regulations, as well as identifying where the need would be and why people move there. And you hit on so many things. So if people are listening, like, rewind this to the start of that question and listen to it 32 times if you have to. I don't care. That's like when you're evaluating markets, that's how you quantify it, right? I talk to commercial investors all the time that try to quantify it into like spreadsheets and vacancy rates and all this other stuff, which obviously are important, but those things that you just hit on are somewhat intangible. You can't put that in a spreadsheet, but they all make a very big difference in projects and feasibility.
Right. And I've bought properties out of state when I was early in my investing career by myself, and it's very difficult. You're relying on other people. There's vendors trying to screw you out of money. I have lots of stories along that. Won't get into it, but you should really be doing real estate in your backyard. And if your backyard's not where you want to do real estate, move somewhere that you want to do business. And when I say backyard, I mean, like, look, I'm building in Mooresville. I am very hyper focused, but you could do North Charlotte. You could do Lake Norman, right? I wouldn't even suggest doing all of Charlotte. I would pick niche markets and do them there. You don't need to live in Charlotte and buy in Ohio. It's like, learn a market. It's just like what we talked about earlier. Become an expert in one area, in one field, in one area, and then do it the best. And you'll know the trends, the rents, the sales prices. You'll know everything. You'll know when there's a hiccup in the market. You'll go, oh my God, there's something coming, and you'll be able to call it out. It's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that has come up so many times just in this episode alone in so many different facets. And I really hope that people take this to heart and really kind of sit down and evaluate who your niche is, what your niche is, and then actually like take action on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, online, not only are people just trying to show you how much money they're making, they're also showing you they're buying deals everywhere. And even in the position I am today, I'm like, that would be such a pain. They got to learn. Granted, if you're going to grow your company very big and you're going to explore the markets and you have the capacity and employees and people that will help you in those markets, great, have at it. I don't want to be that. I remember during the downturn too, I saw companies go from 100 people to 5 people. I've seen companies go from 30 to 1. So when I was going to grow my businesses, I was going to approach it from, I want to have few people that I'm going to take really good care of for the rest of their lives, and almost build it like a family where they're invested, give them equity ownership. If, just maybe a little too much, but anyway, so like really invest in those people and then focus in one place. But if you want to grow to a big company, that's fine. I don't have any desire to be a billionaire. I've met young agents that are like, I want to be a billionaire. I'm like, why? You know how much responsibility that is, first of all? And do you want any time with your kids or your wife or your, this or that? Like that doesn't sound pleasant.
Yeah. You know how many people hate you?
Yeah.
I love that.
That's perfect. I mean, it's ideal for you and your lifestyle, right. And you have built your business around all of that, as opposed to building your life around your business and trying to trying to work that backwards. So I love everything you just said, and we talk about how much money people make on social media and all the bullshit out there. There, I feel like at times there are people out there talking about how many millions they're making, and like they weren't even alive for the last crash. Like I think there are legit 14-year-olds on my Instagram and TikTok, like bragging that they just did another $20,000 wholesale deal, and I'm like, dude, you don't even know. Actually, I did see one kid the other day. He calls himself a venture capitalist, and he's like 15 years old. Like, I shit you not, he's 15 years old, and he said, he posted something about like, here's my advice for what to do after going through the hardest month of raising capital of my entire life. And people are like, excuse me? In 2022, July or August of 2022, you just hit the hardest month of raising capital and now you want to give advice? Like, buddy, let's talk to the people who, like you, grinded through the hours and hours and hours of time in 2008, 2009, 2010, and then came out on the other side of it and lived to tell the tale after making $18,000 in a single year. Like, don't tell me that August of 2022 was hard and you're now going to give some advice about how to manage a down market, you little 15-year-old shit.
First of all, who the hell's writing their checks to a 15-year-old? I want to know that
shit.
first.
That's what I was like. I was like, what is this?
You need to change your algorithm, Brooks.
It's all these venture capitalists and shit. I'm like, you're not a venture capitalist because you raised 10 grand to go start 3 lemonade stands down the street, kid. Like, I'm sorry, doesn't make you a venture capitalist.
Yeah.
All right, Brooks. We're gonna get you off your soapbox. We know that.
I love it. I love it. We could do a whole nother podcast.
I told you there's a point that I'll just like get to, right?
Yeah.
And I just like,
he gets in a mood.
I love it.
Well, we might have to have you back on for another podcast because it's already been an hour, and
I'm so sorry.
I feel like there's so much more.
This was awesome.
No, this was so awesome, and that's
cool.
That's just the sign of you have so much knowledge. You don't even realize that you're saying it. And, I hope that people come back and they take notes and they listen to this a lot of times because there is so much gold that you just dropped and you were just talking casual conversation. So maybe we will have you back. That would be an honor. But before we let you go on this round, we want to do one more little fun round with you. We call it our lightning round. Sure. We're going to ask you some random questions. We did not prep you for this. We're just going to have some fun. And we're going to go back and forth a couple questions. So cool. My first question for you is, if you could sit on a bench and chat with anyone for 1 hour, who would it be?
Oh my Lord. Oh man. Can I say this? No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I'd love to chat with my dad again and just show him what I've done.
I love
Sorry.
That. I love that. I just got goosebumps.
Sorry. If I was going to talk to someone that inspires me, I mean, God, if I could give anything to talk to Elon Musk or Joe Rogan, or like, if you want me to go in that direction, there's a whole nother list of people.
Whatever direction you wanted to take it.
Yeah, no, my dad for sure, because there were a lot of things I did with him as kids. Like, I'm really into cars, and we used to go to car shows together in the kids, and I have a car collection. And another thing is to set goals for yourself, and we don't have to hit on that one too much, but I've used cars as goals for myself. And if he could just see what I've built and, my passion come to life in that area too, that he also enjoyed. So that would be my answer.
I love that.
I love it. Vinny, what's your ideal vacation in one sentence?
Oh, so glad you asked. So I don't take vacations, believe it or not.
No way.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, so my cousin came down from upstate New York and was standing in my man cave. That's where we're sitting right now. This is about the 2,200 foot building I just finished. That's where I have my office and my cars and stuff. And he stood at the bottom of the stairs with me. He goes, "When are you going to start enjoying your life a little bit?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "I'm going on some trips." So I just started traveling. And I'm not only doing local stuff. I mean, Blue Ridge Mountains, Lake Lure. I'm going on a car rally, starts in Chicago and goes to Atlanta over 5 days, stuff like that. But other than that, I mean, I've been to Italy one time and I've been to Spain, but I never traveled growing up, so I don't really have a desire for it.
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I'm still hearing that you're enjoying your life, even though
I'm enjoying the heck out of my life.
Okay.
But I like being here. I like being in the office. It sounds terrible.
That's not terrible. That's great.
I get more joy out of what I'm doing here. Yeah.
Back to the Wolf on Wall Street.
Yeah.
Back to that comparison. Like I'm just gonna work 15 hours a day and then, live it up.
All right, Penny, what are 5 things that you can't live without?
I mean, my wife and my kids, right? That's got to be at the top.
Of course.
Cars. I have a lot of classic cars. Those are I drive my cars all the time. I live on a farm about 15 minutes from downtown Mooresville, and I get to drive backcountry roads every day. Like I'm living my dream, right? So that's something. That would be number 5. It'd be like wife, kids, it was somewhere in there, right? And then third is the relationships I have with my business partner and Amy and my mom, who actually works for us. And Amy works with us in our office too, and she's amazing. And that's number 4. And oh my Lord, did I say integrity enough times in this thing?
We can count it.
We'll just drive it home one more time.
What's that?
I said we'll just drive it home one more time.
Right? That's fair, right? I mean, it's not a tangible thing, but it's definitely like the most important. I hate to sound cheesy, but
What
true.
a simple man. I love it. I love it. We got to get you, first off, we got to get you to more beaches and experience the beach and all the sun. And that's Kate and I. So that's where we like to vacation. So
I
we're
grew up
dragging you along.
I grew up at the beach and I surfed for 25 years. I mean, almost every
true.
day. So like I've lived that
Damn it,
and
that's home
loved
for
it.
you.
And so now, when you live in Charlotte, 4 hours gets you a whole different experience drive wise. And the Blue Ridge
Yeah.
Mountains are some of the most phenomenal driving in the country. And so, local stuff around here even is just phenomenal. You don't have to go overseas or across the country, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, I can speak from experience with Denver and the mountains in my backyard too.
Yeah.
It's a whole different world. All right, my question would be, if you could retire tomorrow, what would you do?
I would spend as much time with my kids on my farm as possible. And I'd be driving my cars a hell of a lot more.
I love it.
But I will tell you, retirement, I've met a lot of people who are retired and they all tell me it's boring. So I don't think I'll ever retire. I think even if you're just doing a few, if I'm doing like one development a year or finding something that inspires me or finds purpose, I think you'll find me working. It'll keep you going forever.
Yeah, you got to have some kind of project to keep you moving.
That's right.
Absolutely. Okay, my last question for you in the lightning round. What is your favorite real estate or business book?
I mean, I mentioned it earlier, Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? I mean, it's not like specific to real estate per se, the entire book, but that was the most inspiring book I've ever read. And I have some others I've read in real estate space, but again, my ADD prevents me from reading a lot of books. So
Gotta get
audiobooks sometimes.
I love it.
But what's funny now though is I've never been so like I'm a very like in the trenches type of guy. And I like listening to podcasts because I want to actually know what's going on in the world right now in long form. So when I'm usually listening instead of an audiobook, believe it or not, I'm listening to long form, listening to experts in their fields.
Yeah.
I'll listen to real estate guys talk instead of reading a book that was written 3 or 4 years ago.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
I love that.
And I'm not discounting those books. That's how you keep up with what's going on.
Yeah.
It's different.
No, I think that's
it's
great.
different. And I agree with that. Yeah.
Like you guys, listening to you guys.
Yeah. Like that. Yeah. Okay, Vinny, final question for you is, if you lost everything except for your knowledge, what would you do in your first 30 days to close the deal?
That's an easy one. I've got in this phone probably 12,000 contacts or 20,000. I don't even know how many I have now. I just start making some phone calls, see who wants to do some business.
I love it.
And that's because of who I was when I first started this business and the relationships I built from having integrity, doing what I say I'm going to do, and showing up. And it would be very easy to rebuild it all.
Perfect.
I love that.
Yep.
Perfect.
I love that. Well, Vinny, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been awesome. My mind has been blown more times than one listening to you,
So,
and especially about just how simple things can be. Like you are a
mhm,
very simple man, but you are also very successful, and
mhm.
I think that simplicity translates into your greatness. And so, again, I thank you very much for coming on to this episode and sharing with us. And for those of you listening, thank you for joining us today. And if you like this week's dose of the RE Junkies podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have a crazy real estate story or a great case study, click the submission link in the show notes to be featured in a future episode. Submissions can remain anonymous. And we'll catch you junkies next time on the only real estate podcast of its kind.